Now, a string instrument known for its warm, rich and lyrical tone has come out on top of the ABC Classic 100 Your Favourite Instrument poll. Yes, the cello was a unanimous favourite with voters, beating out the piano at number 2 and the violin at number 3. All up, there were 171,000 votes cast for 327 instruments. The glockenspiel, the althorn, the Chinese eru, never heard of it, the taiko drum, I know about that, as well as, of course, the didgeridoo, which incidentally came in at number 15. There were even votes for the cowbell. Instruments from all musical cultures and all traditions. It's fantastic. My next guest is celebrating 50 years in the business. He's a cellist and author of I Am Cellist, who grew up in Perth before his family moved to Sydney. David Loew, welcome. And for someone who loves the cello as much as you, I'm sure you're quite excited today.
Nadia, lovely to be speaking. And I've just been off the scene for 18 months with various things, looking after my late mum, who was 101, 24/7. So it's nice to be back on air, and it's a lovely competition you've been running.
Tell me about the cello winning the Classic 100, your favourite instrument. Did it surprise you that the cello came out on top?
Well, not really. I started at 6, and my late mentor was Christopher Bunting, one of the top cello teachers in the world. And he used to say, Dave, when you walk on stage, the cello is the king of the orchestra.
Why is it?
And I thought it's a lovely expression. It is.
Why is it the
great
king?
Well, I think it's got that mid-range, so it's always had that wide appeal. Obviously, it's 500 years old, the cello. It just hits people in the right spot. I mean, I started my first album released in 1987, debut, and I've been living off CD sales for 22 years, only selling albums. And I hit 2.4 million around the world on my own sales. So something must be right there. It was bikies or doctors. I think it's very chill out. It's very soothing. I love the violin, but a little kid at home could be sounding like a moggy having its tail pulled.
Now, some people have described the cello as an instrument that is close to the human voice. Do you agree?
Absolutely. In fact, my first album debut in 87 was a pioneer of crossing over because I have a show business background. I've always taken melodies like Barbino Caro, Memory, because they were vocals, or, from Streisand songs, because the cello, it is closest to the voice. It's got that range, the tenor. I just got an Italian cello recently, and I always think, the Italians are the best because it's got the Bocelli up on the tenors. It can really sing and project.
David Loew is my guest this morning. He's an Australian cellist, author of I Am Cellist, and has released many CDs and albums. And we are celebrating the cello today because ABC Classic 100, your favourite instrument poll, saw the cello voted as the number one instrument. That is your favourite. Is it hard to learn?
Well, I think any string instrument, we've got to be dedicated. It just takes time, persistence. And I think for young ones, it's always the threshold of don't push them. I still consider myself learning after 50 years. As I said, I've made, 25 albums, which are on my website, Dave Loew, loew.com. I mustn't push that one too hard.
Just a little plug there.
Well, I think it just shows the fact that, I invested in recording all my own albums. There's about 25 out there. It's been my sole living. And then I know in England when I was touring, I sold to every genre, age. I had ladies in burqas from the Emirates buying my albums at Windsor, doing shopping centres, people, officials, policemen, bikies, the whole shebang. So it does touch the heart and soul. And I don't think any other instrument really quite comes to that point. So there's the proof, really. I'm still here after 50 years of playing the cello and earning a living.
Yeah, so you're obviously doing a very, very good job, Dave Loew. Just here's a little bit of you performing Can't Help Falling in Love. Let's have a little listen. Oh, Dave Loew, that's beautiful. And I believe that was a tribute to your late mum.
Yeah, the love of my life. She was my
Oh.
biggest fan, and I used to play for her in the lounge. And in her last few months, I did a James Bond album 18 months ago, which on Spotify is the most popular. And she used to move around the lounge at night, 101, just her arms, to Moonraker. And it's actually on YouTube, and it makes me cry when I see her. I do miss her very much.
The love of music, it must be such a
Hmm.
driving force for you.
It's been my whole passion. I mean, I've been through some really interesting times, like a lot of people, the ups and downs, but I've always bounced back. And it's the love of the cello. In fact, before Mum passed, I moved to an Italian cello again. I call her Maria. My cellos have always been named. My previous cello was Gladys, although she was Italian. And people love Gladys around England. And, you know, I'm just besotted. It's a copy of a very famous cello called the Schneider by Matteo Goffrilla, 1693. There wasn't just Stradivarius, there were other big makers. I just fell in love with it. I played it for 5 minutes. Mum bought it for me before she passed on. So it's called Maria.
Well, how many cellos do you have, Dave?
Well, I've had 6. And I want to say very quickly, I noticed the competition's not mentioned the electric. I play an incredible Yamaha, the silent cello, which the Bond girls first launched. And I used it around England for 20 years because I was doing shopping centres, touring, outdoors, playing in the freezing weather, in shopping markets, selling a ton of albums. And it works so well with the sound system. In fact, the James Bond album I did on the Yamaha with David Cameron, who's one of the finest musicians in the country, and Pete Dacey at Secret Sounds in Melbourne.
Oh.
And it's got a great punchy sound, you know, it's got a lovely sound. So it's my version of the two cellos.
Well, let's keep listening to you on the cello, Dave Loew. Thank you so much for joining me as we celebrate the cello. Dave Loew there, that was, he's an Australian cellist, and that was him, Can't Help Falling in Love, a tribute to his late mother. And I agree with you, Sue. I think you're absolutely right. She goes, cellos make everything 100 times more beautiful. So true.